Welcome to Research Room Podcast Unscripted. Today we are looking at mixed methods research. I'm welcoming Dr. Peggy Shannon-Baker. She's going to tell us where she's from and who she is, but she's one of the mixed methods experts, according to me. And then I have my colleagues from Multi-University Postgraduate Support Network, Dr. Selepe and Dr. Janu. They are also here. So maybe before I give our guest to greet us and to tell us where she's from, can I give my colleagues an opportunity to just greet us? Dr. Selepe.
Good afternoon, Prof. Mpatlele, and good afternoon, colleagues, and good afternoon, Peggy. Welcome to today's session. My name is Dr. Selepe. I'm a lecturer here at UNISA in the Department of Early Childhood Education and Development. I am ready to engage with you and learn a lot from you in terms of mixed method. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Nikki Janu. I'm also the member of MUPSGN. I'm a fan of mixed method, I must say, and I can't wait to learn a lot from Peggy. You're already purported as one of the best in mixed method, so I'm excited.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Peggy, let me give over to you and tell our listeners and our viewers and our colleagues to say, I met you at Mixed Methods Research International Association, which is called MIRA, where I'm the secretary, and you will tell us more about your role in MIRA. Over to you.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Peggy Shannon-Baker. I'm an associate professor of educational research at Georgia Southern University, which is located in Savannah, Georgia in the USA. So I'm joining you from sunny, hot, humid Savannah today. As an associate professor there, I teach courses in mixed methods research, qualitative research, action research, and proposal writing. So pretty much most types of research. And as Prof mentioned, I am in the Mixed Methods International Research Association, or MIRA. I will soon be effective in July. I will soon be the president of MIRA for 2025 to 2026. So in the past, I was in MIRA as in charge of the MOOC, the massive open online course that's available to MIRA members. And now I'm looking forward to leading the organization in the coming year.
Thank you so much, Peggy. The reason why we invited you to our support network is that in this support network, we support master's and doctoral candidates with their journey to complete their dissertations and their research. And we have noticed that majority of our South African candidates, they don't take mixed methods, and we don't know whether they are not exposed, and we're hoping for them watching this podcast, maybe it will start exposing them to mixed methods, and maybe if they know a little bit about it, they will start to have interest. So my first question to you is that how can our master's and doctoral candidates decide on a specific mixed method design specifically? Because maybe that's where they start to have a challenge to say, when should I say my study is explanatory or sequential or exploratory sequential, or is convergent or is parallel or is concurrent? So when do they decide that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Just to give a little more background to myself, and then I'll help to answer the question. So my background is in, I'm in education now, so I'm an educational researcher, but before that, I learned about mixed methods in a kind of roundabout way Originally, I was heavily focused in STEM. I was taking college math during secondary school. I originally went to college for chemistry. I ended up with a different degree. And then in my master's program is where I started to learn more about qualitative research. But as I was learning both approaches, they were very kind of specific to this is how we do research. We don't do it that other way. And then in my master's program, it was we do research this way. We don't do it the other way. And I said, well, couldn't we do it both ways? And during my doctoral studies, I had the opportunity to take a mixed methods course. And so that's really transformed my thinking to see that actually mixed methods might be really interesting and appropriate to how I envision research. For me, research is about, we need research that reflects our experience as humans, and we don't have a singular experience. We don't communicate in one way. We are multimodal, and so our research needs to be multimodal. So when picking a kind of mixed methods design, for me, there are 3 different things that I think about that could have some influence to the type of design to pick. So it could be the research questions, it could be contextual factors, and it even goes back to why am I doing mixed methods, or why am I interested in mixed methods anyway? So for research questions, there are some questions like explanatory questions, why is this happening, that are a really good fit for the explanatory sequential design. It might make sense because it's in the name, but you could also use convergent designs to help explain what is happening, because you would have multiple sources of data trying to tell you what's happening. You might be interested in looking at different perspectives. So in education, we might be interested in what are teachers saying and what are students saying, or what are principals saying and teachers saying. That would be a good fit for convergent, because you could collect multiple types of data from different samples and then compare them. And another kind of research question might be interested in developing an instrument, especially a quantitative instrument. That might fit really well with the sequential exploratory part, because you end with an instrument that you've maybe developed. But some of the contextual factors might be the time, right? We want to have a degree finished, right? The best dissertation, the best degree is a finished degree. And so sometimes a contextual factor like time might tell you you need to pick convergent, because you can do the data collection of both simultaneously. And other times you might need to build relationships first, which might fit well with exploratory sequential, because qualitative research starting first might allow you to build the relationships toward, a sequential study. But ultimately, there are many different reasons why you might choose to do mixed methods. And so I'd encourage the listeners, the viewers of the podcast, to look into some of the reasons why we mix methods. And I can share a link to a publication that I have on this topic. I'll put it in the chat, but we can hopefully share it with the podcast listeners later. And this would be a link to the open access version of the article as well, so that people can take a look and see which reasons align with why I might want to do mixed methods.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Colleagues, let me prepare you also to say you are welcome to ask Peggy questions. I believe if you just raise your hand, not a virtual one, but even a virtual one is fine if you are ready to engage, because this is a conversation between us and Prof. Peggy. So most people, before they can start something, they want to know the challenges first. I don't know why. Maybe it's our human nature. So what are some challenges that our MD candidates may encounter, especially when they are collecting or generating data from both approaches? Because in the mixed methods, obviously, they would have a quantitative and a qualitative data. So what challenges they should expect?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think maybe we want to know the challenges first so we can say, is that a challenge I can face or not? But yeah, I think some of the challenges that I faced as a graduate, post-grad student, and challenges I might still face as a researcher are relational. They're about data sovereignty. They're about data management, and even what to analyze first once you get past collecting all of your data. So relationally, we might face issues as researchers if we are trying to do research with a community or a group of people that maybe don't have a sense of trust, either in research in general or in the researcher specifically. And so as a researcher, we have to think, okay, what has been the historical relationship of research, or me as a researcher, with the community I want to do research with, to see how can I try to address some concerns that might have come up, some past relationships that weren't great. Maybe the past relationships were great and you are going to be building onto that relationship. But I think we should consider that history and relationship related to research in a particular community.
How do you then advise a candidate, as you said earlier, that one of the reasons why we adopt mixed methods as a design, it will have been informed by research questions, for example, or the problem statement. And how do you then advise a candidate that will want to go direction of mixed method, but then has got a supervisor that advise them other way around to say, no, you cannot go to a mixed method for whatever the reason, as Prof was saying. Some are more quant or some are more qual, and the moment you are trying to bring another design into what they are already accustomed to, it might be challenging for them to comprehend. But I think my question is more related to supervisor and candidate relationship. How do we then balance that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a challenge that we as mixed methods researchers face globally. So my recommendation for candidates who are interested in doing mixed methods, we can kind of approach it in different ways. So if you have the opportunity to choose a supervisor, it is best case scenario to choose a supervisor who already is familiar with mixed methods. If they are not familiar with it, they might be open to mixed methods. Now, if you don't have such a person at your institution, or if you cannot choose your own supervisor, then you might need to take on the challenge of helping to educate, like sharing readings to your supervisor to say, see, I want to do a study that's similar to this one, which has already been done, and they use mixed methods. Hopefully it's a good example, because then you can say, see what they came up with for findings, see what methods they used. I want to replicate that or do something similar here. If you have examples that have been published, that can help make the case. So having that clear sense of why you want to do mixed methods is also going to be really supportive. For candidates learning to do research and conducting their own study, there's at some point a transition between I am doing only what I'm told to doing I need to do it in this way, and I'm now building my self-efficacy, my confidence in being able to say this is how I'm doing it and why I'm doing it that way. So at some point in the journey, you're transitioning to the latter option to really strongly advocate for this is why it needs to be mixed methods. This is why I'm doing it this way. And here's how I can assure you that it's going to be as strong as it could be. But, you know, I think an important thing to keep in mind, I think really globally across different types of supervisory relationships, I tell students, the dissertation process is a lot like a marriage ceremony. Your marriage is not just about you and the person you're getting married to, it's also about your family. And in this case, your family is your dissertation supervisor, and you're also your other members of your committee. You might have to make decisions that they want you to make, just as might happen in a wedding ceremony. But it's not insurmountable. If you can find somebody who's at least supportive or open to you doing mixed methods, then that is going to be how you can get it done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I can see Dr. Nikki is answered. Dr. Selepe, you are welcome to also come into the conversation. Majority of our candidates, Prof. Peggy, they assume that since in the mixed methods, you'll be going for qualitative data and quantitative data, their confusion even starts from choosing a design. Some of them, they think they will have a quantitative design and have a qualitative design and mix them together. That's how they think. And when they get now an information to say, we have specific designs for mixed methods, and they start to say, wow, we didn't know. And now when coming to the issue of ensuring the quality and credibility of the data, since it comes from different strands, how can they ensure the quality and credibility without them worrying about I've got qualitative, I've got quantitative, I should follow qualitative methods or qualitative procedures, and now I'm following quantitative procedures, because always in their minds, this mixing is the one that confuses them. So maybe if you can assist us with that, how do they keep the quality and the credibility of the data?
Yeah, what I would say is that typically especially in some initial mixed methods design work that students might do, the components of their research process could or could not stand on its own as an individual study. It really just depends on the nature of what you're trying to do in your study. But in terms of credibility, quality, I might call it rigor, you still want to ensure that both your qualitative components and your quantitative components are rigorous. That doesn't mean it has to be the most rigorous study ever. It just means that you need to follow whatever the basic characteristics of that type of research are to ensure that you are doing those parts well, because that is the foundation that you're working from. And from there, you're building up to doing integration, which is the purposeful mixing or influence of those two methods together. So in qualitative research, it's trustworthiness. That's how we talk about rigor. In quantitative research, it's reliability and validity. It's around instrumentation and the involvement or lack of involvement of the researcher. You still need to have those measures of credibility in a mixed method study. But now what you need to think about is, how can I purposefully mix these sources of data together? Or in the case of sequential designs, how can I use one to influence the next? And the nice thing is that for mixed methods, we have many different frameworks for understanding what is rigor in mixed method studies. So we have a publication about mixed methods legitimation. We have publications creating tools, appraisal tools, to evaluate how we're doing mixed methods. And in both of these cases, it's still important to do the qualitative part rigorously, the quantitative part rigorously. But I think what differentiates it here is asking, how can I do the mixing, or the integration do that with rigor and with credibility. And I think there are different strategies for doing that that I think, you know, we could get into if there's interest or another question on that later.
If I can come in just to continue on the integration part, and I'm drawing this from one of my students, you know, when I was saying to her, because you are coming with mixed method design, when you go to your analysis, that's why I want to see integration. But I may have used a term that she was not familiar with. And I said, I want to see how you'll triangulate your results. Would you want to unpack the triangulation part?
I certainly can try. The reason why I'm laughing here is because there are mixed methods researchers, and even over time in mixed methods and in just research methods history, the definition for triangulation has changed over time. So it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing for everyone. So it's important to consider, how is the person who's telling you about triangulation, how are they exactly defining it? The way I approach it in my work is triangulation is like, if I think about cell phone signals use triangulation to try to pinpoint your location. So you're trying to figure out your location is based on the distance between, let's say, 2 or 3 points. Those towers that are trying to pinpoint our location are asking the same question, where are you? But they only have a certain amount of area to look in. And the same thing can apply as a metaphor for research methods. Qualitative research can address these kinds of things. Quantitative research can address these kinds of things. So in triangulation, we can say, how can I pinpoint this issue, this topic, this thing that I'm interested in, using these two methods? So it's about comparing two different types of data, quantitative and qualitative, to try to measure the same thing. And if they get to the same point, they get to the same issue, then that's an example of triangulation, which is a little bit different to other reasons why we might integrate. So like trying to expand an idea or something like that might have a different approach. If you're interested in triangulation, you're trying to collect data on the same phenomenon in as close of the same way as possible, but in different ways, qualitative ways, quantitative ways.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question, Nikki, and also for answering that, Prof. Peggy. You know, before we even talked about the credibility and the integration, I think we skipped the most important one, which is about sampling. Most of the time, we say to our students, when you going to select a strategy, it is even difficult in our single methods like qualitative, where you'll find a candidate saying, I'm using like purposive, or I'm using and non-probability sampling, or I'm using probability sampling. They are struggling to put that into practice. Choosing is easy for them because they like know the lists of the sampling strategies to say, we have non-probability, we have probability, we've got purposive, but putting it into practice, that's what I've noticed, especially when I examine other theses and dissertations from other universities. I see similar problem, and even with my candidates that I'm supervising, I struggle to like advise them to say, choosing the sampling strategy is another thing, but putting it now into practice to say step by step, how did I go about sampling? And I've learned also that in mixed methods, there are some mixed methods sampling strategies. And I would love to hear about that from you, to say what I've learned actually, was it the way I understood it? And maybe to just guide our candidates to say when they are on the mixed methods, how best will they maybe choose the sampling strategies? Is it dependent also on the research questions? How best should they go about mixed methods sampling strategies? Thank you.
Yeah, for me, there are a couple of things that I think about when I'm choosing a sampling strategy. The things that I think about are my ethics as a researcher. So what kinds of things are important to me as a researcher? Something like uplifting the voices of marginalized communities is something that's very important, which would translate into I want to be doing research with marginalized communities. I want to be focusing on their voices. If I have other types of groups in the research, I want to find ways to center the data from them in everything that I do. So that's something that's important for me. Another reason could be really your reason for doing mixed methods in general. If we go back to the example of, I want to create an instrument to measure this particular phenomenon, but no one has ever done it here. And so if you say here, then you want to consider, okay, how can I get to the people who are best positioned to help me create this instrument? Which also relates to the other thing you have to consider, which is your research purpose and questions. For me in education, I often find people first go to, well, let me talk to teachers about the impact of this teaching intervention. And I say, why don't we go to students more? Students have an opinion about how this intervention has impacted their sense of self-efficacy, if they felt like they did well. So we have to ask who is best positioned to answer the question and aligns with our ethics as a researcher to decide who can we pick.
Thank you so much, Peggy. I think we are left with less than 5 minutes for the time that we have scheduled. I'm going to give this time maybe to Dr. Nikki if he has something to ask, and we're going to also give you opportunity to just share anything that you feel is of importance. I believe this time to unpack mixed methods issues and mixed methods strategies is not enough. Maybe we'll have another session one day and to tackle others, or even maybe invite some of our students to just be the ones asking you some questions related to their challenges. Dr. Nikki?
Thank you so much, Prof. Peggy, let's continue from ethics and with mixed method research, and I call it a movement, right? And I think it will be remiss of me, considering that we're in the era of AI and AI revolution. What are the opportunities that you are seeing within the movement and AI development, intersecting that with ethics, particularly from candidates?
Ooh, Dr. Nikki, we could have a whole episode just on AI and mixed methods and the ethics of that. There's a lot. What I will say in the interest of time, the way that I've approached this as a teacher is to try to approach it from what we call a critical media literacy perspective, which isn't a, yes, we definitely should use AI, no, we definitely should not use AI. The approach is instead to teach students how to ask critical questions about the use of AI. In the same way that when I teach qualitative data analysis software, there are ways to automatically generate codes of your data once you put it into the software program. We need to ask critical questions of that in the same way. So some of the critical questions that I ask of AI, I can name 3 just in the interest of time. One is, what is the environmental impact of me asking AI repeated questions? Do I know the environmental impact? If I don't, I would need to look into it because there's a great environmental impact. The farms that are needed to cool the machines to do these calculations has a huge impact on the environment. Number two is, do I know what is going to happen to the information that I put into a generative AI system? For example, if I give it my interview transcripts to come up with themes for me, do I know what happens to those transcripts afterwards? Can someone else essentially access them through questions that ask the same AI system? And then the third one is, what is my responsibility as a researcher to ensure that my participants are informed about whether their data ends up in a generative AI system? My research ethics says I need to ensure that my participants know everything that's happening with their data because it's their data. It's not mine as a researcher. I'm helping to share their stories. It's not my data, it's their data. So they should be able to make those choices. So those are my perspectives on it, but really we could have a whole conversation on AI, how it can help, how we need to ask these critical questions of it as well.
I like the fact that you said we're going to need the whole episode on that. Maybe the other episode should be AI and mixed methods research. And I remember our last conference, we added a little bit of AI and big data as one of the themes of the conference. So Peggy, it has been a good time and we wish we can go on and on and on. Unfortunately, we have scheduled only for 30 minutes. In this few minutes left, can you just share some of the information that you feel is valuable for our M&D candidates?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the message I would end with is do mixed methods and to try to position it as an opportunity to learn how to do it and to give yourself some flexibility to say it doesn't have to turn out perfectly. Mixed methods is actually a lot messier than it might seem in examples. I recently wrote about that with another colleague on how messy mixed methods can be, but it's very worthwhile. And I think it is a better approach because it helps to better showcase what our life is like as humans, because we don't exist either qualitatively or quantitatively. We exist in multiple modes, in multiple media, and so we need research methods that show that, and mixed methods is one way of doing that. So I hope more people will feel energized or at least a little bit more interested to pursuing mixed methods with this and other episodes about mixed methods from the podcast.
Thank you so much, Prof. Peggy. Thank you so much. Banele from Blingo Studios in the background, we really appreciate. This is Research Room Podcast Unscripted. I am Ramashego Shilamphahlele from the Research Room Podcast Unscripted, and I'm hoping that we're going to share all the links that Prof. Peggy have mentioned. Please share them with us so that we can share with our listeners and our viewers. And from us, from Soweto Studio, I'm in Limpopo today. Dr. Janu also is in Limpopo, Liwahomu. I think Dr. Selepe is in Pretoria. So this podcast today has brought in so many locations in one. And peace.